Riddle me this, what is the best side mission in Batman Arkham Knight? Well, today we'll find out. 5 months ago, I embarked on a mission to rate every single side mission in Batman Arkham Knight, for better or for worse. I've nearly completed this challenge, but one mission remains, the granddaddy of any group of Arkham side missions, Riddler. Riddler always comes out with the biggest and most challenging of any side mission in the Arkham franchise. Whether it's his small but memorable collectathon on Arkham Island, his never-ending attempted Doctor destruction in the walled-off super prison of Arkham City, his extortionately complex city-wide manhunt on Christmas Eve in Arkham Origins, or finally, his biggest plan yet, his magnum opus, his revenge. His plan to wear down Gotham's Dark Knight by sheer quantity, while holding his lover hostage in Batman Arkham Knight. So for those of you who don't know, or have forgotten, this is how we're going to do this. Each side mission in Arkham Knight has been rated off of its story, gameplay and difficulty, each from 1 to 10. These scores are then added together at the end of the review, and the closer to 30, the better the mission is. So here we are, the final stop in our journey. Like, subscribe and strap in as we tackle the Riddler's Revenge, and stick around to the end to find out the final rankings of the side missions. As far as the story goes, Riddler gets a good setup, which goes back as far as Riddler's rivalry with Batman itself. He's sick of being beaten, outsmarted, or unfairly cheated out of victory. His pain is constant and sharp, and he doesn't wish for a better world for anyone, least of all Gotham's Batman. He's been doxxed in the asylum, outsmarted in City, and even beaten by a younger, angrier Batman back on Christmas Eve, and tonight he's out for his ultimate revenge, once and for all. And what's the best way to get to the Bat? Well, you take the cat. Edward hired Catwoman to help him steal something from Wayne Enterprises to lure her into his trap, and be taken by his newest inventions, the first of their kind, the Riddler bots. After being brought into the fold of Scarecrow's plan to finally take Batman down and engulf Gotham in fear toxin, Riddler takes the Cyrus Pinckney orphanage on Miagani Island, and begins tricking it out with death traps, electric floors, robots, and of course, Catwoman. Not usually the one playing damsel in distress, tonight she might just have to wait for her Dark Knight in shining armour to save her, because Edward, being the gentleman he is, has strapped enough explosive to her neck to make sure none of her 9 lives are left. At least it's all packed in a stylish necklace. Batman can find out about this in one of 2 ways. The first being when Edward, never one to be outshone, broadcasts his plan across Gotham's billboards, telling the Dark Knight that he has Selina, and if he wants to make sure she doesn't lose her head, he must go to the orphanage, and upon arriving at said orphanage and freeing Selina from her restraints, Riddler throws some robots at us so he can use some classic Bat and Cat combo battering to dispatch of these things. The other way we can find Edward is right at the start of the night after taking Poison Ivy into the GCPD's custody. Aaron Cash tells us about a strange man skulking around the train yard. Here we can find Eddie's first trial. Either way, from here on, the story is simple to follow. Riddler has placed 10 jigsaw-like trials around Gotham, split between being placed around the city and in the orphanage. From races to gliding challenges, combat challenges, and challenges set specifically for a Bat and Cat team-up. And despite the fact superheroes don't do that kind of thing, the pair can work together to make sure Catwoman can keep her head going. Anyway, until the challenges and trials are done, the story is on hold, so let's look at what Eddie's got in store for us, and we'll come back to the story later. Heading to the train yard for his first trial, we find a racetrack underground called Mental Blocked. And it's here Eddie outlines 10 rules for us to follow, none of which we'll be following because as he withholds codes needed to complete the course and control the obstacles we'll face, Batman decrypts the codes early and we begin the race, much to Riddler's dismay as he covers this clear mistake up as the night's first riddle. The challenge is as follows. Make it around the track 3 times using the codes we decrypted to control the various obstacles around the track, and complete it within the set time. It's a time trial with stakes. This is the first one of these we do, and it's pretty good. It's simple, fun, and something totally new. The added factor of being able to control the track to a certain level means we can really utilise the different obstacles, and with good timing, can really fly around this track using the Batmobile's now unlocked afterburner. After finishing the race and unblocking the mental block, Batman is shown a bunch of green lights in a specific order, with one red light. These lights represent the display of keys and display cases back at the orphanage, and the player now has to look at the display using Batman and pick the corresponding key as Catwoman. Failure to pick the right key results in Selina losing her head, and success sees the counter on her necklace go down by 1, and when all the trials are complete the collar can come off and the cat can go back on the prowl. After picking the right key and taking the counter down to 8 keys left, we can head over to the next trial in Chinatown. Balancing Act.
Well, Dark Knight, eager for more? It's humbling, isn't it?
Balancing Act is another Batmobile-based challenge, but this time it isn't a race, more a test of your precision driving the Batmobile. When visiting each trial, Riddler will proclaim his clear mental superiority over Batman, telling him how again, he's clearly the more mentally proficient of the two, despite the Dark Knight proving this to be wrong on numerous occasions. These little outbursts of mental-based rants are some of the funniest bits in the whole game. Riddler's voice actor, Wally Winger, who is one of the very few VAs to stay for all of the 4 mainline Arkham games, really captures the overblown ego and narcissistic tendencies of Edward Nygma. In my opinion, he is the Riddler. As good as different takes on him have been, Corey Michael Smith and Paul Dano come to mind as 2 of my favourites, but for me, Wally Winger surpasses them purely because, aside from capturing that completely unbearable essence, he makes the Riddler pathetically hilarious. Every line is delivered with such bravado and arrogance and overblown ego that you can't help but laugh at how genuinely sad Eddie comes across. He even looks like a bum. He stopped taking care of himself and dedicated his entire life to taking down Batman, and it still ends up not being enough, and it's kind of sad as it is pathetic, and makes this Riddler kind of likeable. Like, he's still the Riddler, so the urge to beat him to death with his own stick is still huge, but equally, he's kind of endearing, like, you kind of feel bad for him. Anyway, Balancing Act combines precise Batmobile driving, precise remote controlling, and a sprinkle of common sense, and this means that this challenge can be quite tricky for first-time players. It's a fun little challenge room because it combines so many different aspects of the game's movement, and after completing it we get another key, and Selina gets one step closer to freedom. Our next challenge room is actually in the orphanage, our first real Edward Nygma trap room for both of our characters to tackle. After heading to the orphanage, we find Selina relaxing under the pale light of the Riddler's intelligence, but before we can get to her, we need to solve a riddle which is all about differing perspectives. Obviously we do this and meet Selina, who seems really upset we didn't get to her sooner, because Eddie wouldn't open the next room until Batman arrived. When he finally does arrive, we enter the third challenge room, Numeracy 101.
I do hope you two are getting along, because you'll need to work together if you want to find the key hidden in here.
Numeracy 101 is the first room we go into, which takes the brains and brawn of the Bat and the Cat combined. The two stand on pressure pads and then have to tell each other the numbers which pop up on the board in front of them, which correspond to the other person's Riddler logo buttons, to which the correct code needs to be put in, and after both codes are put in correctly, Riddler's little helpers attack the pair, giving us some more tag team combat. And after the robots are defeated, Catwoman obviously gets her third key. This time there's no challenge to get the key because it's just in a display case, which can either be smashed in by Batman or carefully stolen by Catwoman. After leaving the room, Edward invites us to his next challenge, underneath the Elliott Memorial Hospital, and so that's our next stop. We get to Elliott Memorial and head down another one of the Riddler's comically long elevators before hitting the bottom, where we're faced with his next trial, the Crushinator.
I wanted you to know the full extent of my brilliance, you understand?
The Crushinator acts like the previous course. It's a racetrack. We can control using the codes Batman got earlier, meaning that, like Mental Blocked earlier on, we can kind of do this any which way we want, using well-timed object switches to complete the track and eventually get the key for Selina. This track is a little harder though due to its layout and tight corners, and most frustratingly, the blocks we can't control. There are certain sections where the blocks are remotely controlled and we can't do anything to them, so they end up acting like actual obstacles, which again, combined with this track's penchant for tight corners, makes this a genuinely tricky track to navigate if you're not on your A game. But thankfully, you're Batman and so you do make it through. And we make light work of this track and grab Selina's next key using the switchboard of lights. Next on our list of tests is a test of our gliding ability, as we take on Flight School.
Your feeble resistance makes a pleasant change from the instant capitulation of everyone else.
Flight School is underneath Gotham's casino, and it fills our need. our need for speed, as we have to navigate a multi-stage gliding trial using the Batmobile's ejector seat to get enough air to gradually unlock the track around. Dodging the water beneath us, the hallway of saw blades and crushers, and finally, most dangerously, Riddler's razor-sharp comments, like this one where he actually kind of makes a good point.
The only mammal capable of flight, since all you do is glide, is actually a variety of swarms.
This is actually one of my favourite of the trials in the game because it makes use of the gliding and really puts you to the test while using it. It's genuinely fun to glide in this game and has some of the best and most satisfying gliding in the franchise, so to use it here and have it integrated into the game in a way which isn't just an AR challenge is really cool. But after completing the course and finding the right box for Catwoman's next key, we find out that our next trial is back at the orphanage, so it's time to head back to Selina and see what we can do about getting that necklace off. Upon arriving back at the orphanage and heading into the next room, our next trial lies in front of us. Intro to Physics.
Your next challenge is simple. Guide an electric charge to its destination.
Intro to Physics is actually one of the more smartly put together challenges Eddie has done for us, because for once it doesn't involve someone being killed should they fail, and it actually involves a little bit of intelligence, something that not a lot of these rooms or racetracks do. I mean, why would Riddler want to kill Batman because he can't drive well? It baffles the mind. But anyway, you need to make a path for an electrical current using pipes which move when corresponding pads are stood on, and each moving pipe moves higher depending on how much weight is on it. Batman weighs the most, so he moves the pipes up a fair bit, but if you need to move the current pipe right to the top, Catwoman will need to share the pad with Batman, combining the two's collective weight since Catwoman weighs about half as much as Batman. So if you need a pipe moving a little bit, stand on it with just Selina, and move Batman over to the next pipe to keep the circuit flowing. It's really cool actually, and a good way to use the otherwise pretty boring Riddler pressure pads. After the current has reached its destination, the key appears, but of course it's on an electrified floor. Either of the characters can stand on a pad which powers the floor down, but Riddler introduces his second generation of android allies. These new Riddlerbot variants are coloured red and blue, and these colours correspond to who can deal damage to them. Batman can hit the blue ones, Catwoman can hit the red ones, and if either character hits the other person's bot, they get shocked and a broken combo. So to get the key you have to fight these bots, switching between the pair on the fly to take them down, before finally grabbing the sixth key and finding out the next challenge is in Otisburg. We head to Otisburg in the Batmobile and head down yet another really long elevator shaft, listening to the sweet sound of the Riddler's mental demise as we head to our next challenge, Drain Pain.
World's greatest detective, ha! And everyone from Gotham to Star City believes it.
Drain Pain is a weird challenge, but it's quite fun. You have to use the Bat-Tank's winch to lower yourself down to different levels of the course and spin the different sections around to unlock a room. After getting into the room and standing on the pressure pad within, you can then move on to the next one, slowly draining the water out of the hole until a final pad is revealed at the bottom, which needs to be stood on so you can unlock the board of lights for you to guide Selina to her next key. Along the way down, the different rooms have two different small challenges. Either a group of Riddlerbots ambush you, or a pair of turrets need to be taken down with the Batmobile. Either way, this room is one of the harder ones. Here's a time lapse of me trying to complete it for this video. Keep in mind, I've 240%ed this game 3 times. Which, if my maths is correct, which it usually isn't, means I've done this room at least 6 times. At least, bare minimum, 6 times. And this is the time lapse, it's genuinely awful.
Take me on home to the asylum. Never alone in the asylum. Anarchy ruled, it was wild, but through it all you never smiled. Joke's on you, I'm in your head, so look who's laughing now. Remember in Arkham City, I killed your girl, so pretty. That was the night you let me die. But when I looked you in the eye, that's when I knew we'd be together. Look who's laughing now.
Anyway, enough of that. We get the key and head back to the orphanage for our 8th trial. We get back to Selina, who begins having doubts she'll ever get out of here, but Batman reassures her she'll be fine, and the two head into the next riddle room, Advanced Death Traps.
I'd just like to say what a novelty it's been constructing riddle chambers for 2 half-wits instead of 1.
This room again requires both the bat and the cat to work in tandem with each other and give each other the correct information to survive. This time it means telling each other the right route to walk on an electrified floor. This isn't too hard until Riddler, being the swell guy he is, begins spinning the 2 boards that the information of the right route is on around, meaning, unless you're actually intelligent, this becomes a lot harder, despite the fact that about halfway across you can just tank the damage and walk onto the pressure pad without the route, but that's cheating and we don't do that. After helping each other across the floor, Riddler sends more of his coloured coordinated killers and we have to fight them off, making sure to use the different characters for the correct bots, and making plenty of use of our dual team takedown, which makes whatever unlucky robot is selected for that move neutral, meaning both characters can get a bit of damage in. We get the key and nearly have 1 paw in the safe zone before Riddler tells us our penultimate riddle room is nigh, and we need to head to Rowley. We need to head to the Rowley Jefferson Ferry Terminal and go and do it. We head to the terminal and find yet another giant elevator shaft, which we can take down to the bottom and find our final racetrack, Condemned.
This is it, Dark Knight. We're done. Well, you're done for, at least.
Condemned seems to have caused a lot of uproar in the community for actually being fairly difficult. It's a racetrack, which doesn't sound too bad, but the sheer quantity of obstacles here makes this the hardest in the game. Each time you go around it, it also changes, whether that be obstacles being different parts of it being controllable by your codes, or even just the course springing new routes onto you. This is the Riddler's hardest challenge yet. A part of it requires you to go vertical on the wall as you have to dodge different crushers. This part is a stumbling block of all stumbling blocks, and the added time limit doesn't help at all. On the flip side though, this course is really fun. It's quite long, maybe a minute per lap if you're decent, and has so many different little tricks and turns that it really is a great final track for you to have to complete. What I love most about it, and basically all of Riddler's different sections, are the designs. Each room and underground section has such a great atmosphere, and even with Riddler's flashy neon lights, the rooms really feel like such a great part of this game, which sticks to the game's overall theme of having great interiors. The orphanage especially is great with it, having a mixture of creepy imagery and remnants of a bygone use of the building, and new additions put in by Riddler. Each part of these mission lines are great, and something I really appreciate about this mission in general. We finish the racetrack and get Catwoman's penultimate key, where we find out that the final riddle room to free Catwoman is back in the orphanage, so that's where we go. Upon arriving back at the orphanage, we find the final exam.
Perfect. Eddie hasn't said a word since you left that last course. Do you ever rub people the right way?
This room requires Batman to use my beloved rec gun to move different Riddler pads around the room so the lasers hanging from the ceiling can hit the floor, using Catwoman as a way to stop the different pads moving when you don't want them to. You do this a few times and eventually the number of lasers multiplies, and after each go the giant blades in the room go after Catwoman, but these can be avoided outright by simply hanging from the ceiling. This room is more of a test of patience, and honestly, for a final exam, really isn't that hard. I mean, the final racetrack was more difficult, I think. I mean, it's decently difficult, but the final racetrack, again, it was probably much worse than this for most players. After completing the room and letting all of the lasers hit the floor, we get Selina's final key, setting her free. But not before, when Catwoman and Batman try to leave, Riddler bursts through the door in a giant mechanical suit and the pair have to fight off more Riddler bots, as Eddie proclaims his premature victory over the duo. But after all of the bots are taken care of, he tells Batman words that would haunt the fanbase for years to come.
You want to finish this, detective? Then you must earn the privilege.
Solve every last riddle in this city and I'll fight you, Batman, but not a moment before.
Yes, that's right, you can't fight Eddie and bring this ordeal to an end unless you find every single one of his trophies, secrets, and Easter eggs. All 243 of them. Yep, all of them. Batman and Catwoman part ways, and so our odyssey begins to complete the Riddler trophies. Riddler was slacking this time around, placing just over 200 less than he did back in Arkham City, But alas, these challenges are more challenging? There are so many different types of Riddler challenges spread throughout the city, and its various interiors, including Simon Stagg's airships, the movie studios, the clock tower, and the GCPD, along with a few more interiors which I'm sure I'm forgetting, because these things are everywhere. There's your standard riddles, usually pertaining to some sort of in-universe Easter egg, your standard trophies that'll just be lying around, trophies locked behind time trials across the city, trophies locked behind challenges themed around the Riddler bots, trophies locked behind Batmobile detective sections akin to the tracking sections of the main story, destructible objects both in the Batmobile and on foot, and even some locked in smaller, less complex riddle rooms, which are always fun, and of course, to find these naturally, it's best to go after any green glowing thug, militia soldier, or even GCPD cop. These can be found around the city, and depending of their level of anti-bat training, they might even resist the initial interrogation, a new way of mixing up the system built in Arkham City. These informants can even be found in cars, making for some really cool moments. Ripping an informant from the car they're in and getting whatever information they know is so cinematic, and it's really fun. The Riddler trophies, riddles, and challenges are also a fun way of expanding the lore of the universe, and can unlock things like concept art, character trophies, and of course, your pride. Finding all of these trophies and challenges and clearing the city of Riddler's influence, and eventually heading back to the orphanage, means we can finally get our hands on the Riddler. He comes up in his giant suit and the fight plays out as it did before, with him sending different coloured robots after us, and we fight them off until, well, we can't anymore. Until Catwoman swoops in and makes the save. We fight the robots and eventually can do dual team moves on Riddler, punching him in the face like we've all wanted to do since about 2009. We do this a few times and finally, after a night of unrelenting annoyance, take Edward Nygma down once and for all. When we leave the orphanage and put Riddler in the Batmobile to be taken to GCPD, we get a conversation between Catwoman and Batman, which initially begins with Catwoman telling Batman he should be thankful for help. But then Batman tells her that he won't be around after tonight, and this is the last time they meet. And despite Selina's best attempt, Bruce stays stoic and the two share a kiss before he leaves with Riddler, leaving Selina behind before the Nightfall Protocol. We then take Riddler to the GCPD lockup, who proudly tells Aaron Cash that he'll be representing himself before being left behind bars, bringing the Riddler's revenge to an end. Before we get to the rankings and the final standings of each mission, I want to talk about the characters in this mission, because there isn't a bad outing here, and a surprise outing which adds so much humour and depth to this mission line. I touched on how great Riddler's performance is earlier, but Catwoman's also pretty good here. She really feels like Catwoman, if that makes sense. She's got this kind of attitude towards the whole situation that she doesn't care, but in brief moments she's clearly scared she might not make it out, and it's a great way of deepening her character beyond a sassy damsel in distress for Batman to rescue. She also gets a nice ending with Batman, where she kind of comes to terms with the fact tonight really is the end of their relationship, and Batman as she knows him, and it's quite a bittersweet ending. Knowing they'll both be alright, but also knowing they won't be together, is quite an emotional way to say goodbye to a character in this series. The other character who gets a great outing here is, of all people, the Joker. Yes, the Joker. Mr. J is so funny in this mission line, and since he's kind of a manifestation of Batman's thoughts, it brings a whole new meaning and dimension to the stuff he says. Like, some of his commentary on the situation is so funny, and his little monologue about meeting Talia al Ghul in hell and quote-unquote comforting her is so funny. Like, Batman's losing his mind, and somewhere in that mental chaos, he's thought that Joker and Talia are in hell with each other. Even if it is the Joker in his mind roaming about and taking over his thoughts, it's so funny, and I think he gets his funniest comments here by far. Riddler also gets some moments to build on his character, one in particular that's been talked about to death in the final boss fight, where he mistakenly calls Batman father, alluding to his childhood trauma that we learned about back in the asylum. It's a throwaway line, but one which I think adds a new level of depth to this character in this universe. But alas, here we are. What does Riddler's Revenge score? Well, for the story, I was pretty mixed. I like it, and it's a simple story, but the characters really carry it and its charm. Every character, even an otherwise pretty stoic Batman, gets some funny lines here, some good dialogue and great character moments. Finally locking Riddler up is a great ending, and that final meeting between Batman and Catwoman is so emotional and a great way to end their story. But it doesn't push the boat out, it also doesn't do anything wrong. All of the characters are great, it's a simple story to follow, but my big gripe, and the reason it can't get any higher than what it's going to get, is that the real ending of this story is locked behind all of the Riddler challenges and trophies in the city. Personally, I don't mind collecting the Riddler trophies and solving the riddles, I think it's really fun, but I know that's a big gripe for some people, and it'll be a big reason a lot of people don't ever complete this game. Combined with it not doing anything outwardly amazing story-wise, and it's the characters involved and how they're handled that get it the large majority of its points, as it earns a respectable 7 out of 10. Gameplay is this side mission's strong point, and through sheer brute force and quantity of content, it has everything. If we look at the riddle rooms, the content under the city, and the Riddler trophies, riddles, and other open world content, you do everything this game has to offer. There literally isn't something you don't end up doing in pursuit of finally taking down the Riddler, and the best part is that it's all pretty fun. There's only a handful of challenges that I remember being annoying enough to pull up a guide, but apart from that, this mission line thrives on the gameplay, and I personally think in terms of both consistent quality and decent quantity of challenges, this is Riddler's peak. The actual in-mission rooms are great, and above all else pretty fun to complete, whether it's solo or with Catwoman, and the racetracks are some of the most fun Batmobile sections in the game, which feel really good to play and don't feel overly used given that there aren't too many time trials. This mission also has plenty of the great dual team combat Arkham Knight does so well, and having Batman and Catwoman fight alongside each other is so cool to see and really gives off some serious comic book vibes. Fighting Riddler alongside Catwoman, I don't know, it just feels right. And finally, the cherry on top, the rewards are great. Well, that is if you're into the lore of the Arkhamverse, and the Gotham City stories are some of the most interesting glimpses of other facets of this universe we get, and the best ones are unlocked through these challenges, and for all of those reasons, I'd be hard-pressed to give Riddler's Revenge's gameplay anything but a 10 out of 10. So, for the final rating of this series, how difficult is Riddler's Revenge? Well, I'll keep this short and sweet because I think there's one simple question which can pretty accurately determine how hard this mission is. How many of you watching have bothered, even after all these years, to get all of the Riddler trophies and fight the Riddler? The actual missions aren't overly hard, although I have heard a lot of complaints about the final racetrack, but aside from that, they're all pretty simple. But what gives this mission a massive push in terms of difficulty is the open world content, and doing it without a guide, fully legit, well, I'm going to get on my high horse a bit and say that the first time I played this game, or went for the 240%, I actually did do it legit. I mean, the other 2 times I did use a guide, I'm not going to shy away from that, alright? I'm a man of principle and honesty, and yeah, I used the guide the other 2 times, but the first time, I did do it without a guide, and it took years off my life, and I can't imagine that your casual Arkham fan is going to want to do this. There's such a huge amount of trophies, riddles and challenges to collect, but some of them are pretty hard if you aren't armed with the Batman knowledge of a lifelong fan, or the patience of a saint. And so for that reason, Riddler's Revenge gets a difficulty rating of 10 out of 10. A nearly perfect 27 out of 30 for Mr. Nashton's final outing pre-Nightfall. So here we are, the final ratings, 5 months of work and we've reached the end. Which side mission is Arkham Knight best? Well, let's start from the bottom. Starting us off as the worst side mission in Arkham Knight, Friend in Need, Hush's lacklustre outing, which got a 5 out of 30. Next up, earning a whole 3 points more than Hush, is Firefly, whose Gotham on Fire side mission earned him 8 out of 30 points. Not much better, but a step up from pressing a grand total of 5 buttons. Coming in with 1 more point than that is Deacon Blackfire, the mad preacher whose Lamb to the Slaughter side mission earned him 9 out of 30, mostly for the combat section and the fun gameplay of this game. Taking a huge 5-point leap to our next mission is Creature of the Night. Man-Bat's first and only appearance in the Arkham franchise sees Dr. Langstrom get a decent one-and-done outing, with an overall score of 14 out of 30. Going right back to where it all began, Two-Faced Bandit snuck in just ahead of Man-Bat with a sneaky 14.5. a decent score for everyone's favourite DA, and his stealth-based bank heist missions. Next up is a not-so-perfect crime, as Professor Pig's Perfect Crime side mission comes in with 17 out of 30 points, although I don't think this rating system does this mission justice at all. Next up, the process of picking Gotham's next saviour, Heir to the Cowl, got a respectable 18 out of 30. But firing itself ahead of Azrael by a whole 0.5 points is Line of Duty, and Captain Underhill sneaks in with 18.5 out of 30, with its fun gameplay and decent story just about getting it a top spot. Again, by another 0.5 points, the Arkham Knight's militia occupation missions get themselves a good 19 out of 30, showing that maybe a good boss fight can make or break a side mission. But now, we're into the top 5. Our first 2 missions to be tied goes to the first 2 missions of the Season of Infamy DLC to appear on our list, with Wonderland and Beneath the Surface getting 20 out of 30 apiece, with Croc and Hatter sharing 5th place. Coming in at 4th, getting itself a Champions League spot, is Shadow War, one of only 2 missions which ends with the player making a choice which can impact Gotham in the long term. A good side mission for a beloved group of characters, and one which divides opinion to this day, with it getting a very respectable 24 out of 30. In 3rd place, a strong contender for the best side mission, but falling short on its difficulty, is Gunrunner, giving Penguin's gun smuggling operation a top 3 place, but much like Oswald, it fails to get any higher and gets a 25 out of 30. Coming in at 2nd place, an emotional farewell for a beloved character who thrived on memorable moments in 3 out of 4 mainline Arkham games. With his classic introduction in Arkham City, his New Year's Eve crash out in Arkham Origins, and then the mission which got him the 2nd place here, Mr. Freeze and In From the Cold getting nearly perfect 26 out of 30. And coming in at number 1, a man who needs no introduction but is currently sat on top of a 29-minute introduction, some people's least favourite mission in every game he's in, some people's favourite, a mission which divides opinion as much as the central character of it. The best side mission in Batman Arkham Knight, following the old phrase of saving the best until last, is the Riddler's Revenge. Edward Nygma gets himself top spot and is crowned the best side mission in Batman Arkham Knight, with a nearly perfect 27 out of 30, just beating out Freeze and Penguin to claim the award, which will stroke his ego more than beating Batman. So I guess we all have to begrudgingly congratulate Edward Nygma for this accomplishment. Congratulations, Eddie, you finally won something. So, these rankings aren't really my opinion. Well, I mean, they are because I made the rating system, but they aren't how I'd rank them in terms of my favourites. My top 5, based on nothing but my own enjoyment, would be Gunrunner, Beneath the Surface, the Militia Occupations missions, In From the Cold, and then at top spot, A Perfect Crime. Hence why I said this rating system does not do A Perfect Crime justice, because it really doesn't, because it is my favourite mission in the game, but it ranked pretty low in this system. This series has been so fun to do. It's what really took this channel off, and is what I'm sure most of you watching found me doing. And I can't thank anyone enough for sticking around and showing support on this series. And although this channel will change and morph as time goes on, this series will always be a favourite of mine. So thank you for watching along. Whether you agree with the rankings or not, thank you for leaving your comments, supporting, and just being there to watch these. Leave your top 5 missions in the comments. I'm curious to see how my 2 rankings stack up to yours. So leave those down below, and I can't wait to show you what's in store for this year. The beginning of the first full year of full-time content on this channel. The Arkham content will be coming, at least one more big retrospective is on the way. It's in the works, but I'm so excited to show you all that. I think it's pretty obvious what it is when you consider I've already done Night Asylum and Origins. But yeah, I'm excited to show everyone that, and the evolution of this channel as the year goes on. Because I've got some ideas cooking up that I'm super excited to get made and show you all. It might not quite be Arkham related, but it's along those lines, so I promise you, you'll like it. Thank you for each and every one of your individual comments, likes and subscriptions, and I wish you all a Happy New Year. Thank you, I hope you enjoyed, and goodbye.